The internet is not reacting to one headline right now. It is reacting to a collision, a celebrity romance, a cloud of allegations, a fan base that wants answers before any courtroom gives them. And the most dangerous part of this whole story may not be what Cardi B said. It may be the fact that Cardi B said anything at all while the ground underneath Stefon Diggs still looks unstable. Because once a superstar starts sounding like defense counsel in the court of public opinion, the conversation stops being only about Stefon Diggs. It becomes about Cardi B's judgment, Cardi B's instincts, Cardi B's tolerance, and whether Cardi B is trying to calm a fire or stand too close to it before anybody knows where the sparks came from. That is why this moment has people talking louder than usual. Not because the internet discovered scandal for the first time. The internet lives on scandal. What changed here is the optics. According to the source material circulating around this topic, a man publicly denied being a thief, claimed he was actually the one whose belongings were taken, urged people to research what allegedly happened, and said that discovery would support his version of events. He also directed a message toward Cardi B, basically saying it was all love, but asking for his name to stop being mentioned. Right there, the story shifted from rumor orbiting a celebrity couple to a public tug-of-war over narrative control. And the reason that matters is simple. When somebody under a cloud of accusation wants distance while the famous person beside him wants to shape perception, those are two very different crisis strategies. One says, let the process unfold. The other says, let me influence the room before the room makes up its mind. Viewers can feel that difference even when they cannot fully explain it. They hear it in the tone. They see it in the timing. They sense when a public figure is speaking from certainty and when that same public figure is speaking from fear. Now layer on top of that the old clips that have come roaring back into circulation. The source material you provided points to those locker room-style moments where Stefon Diggs was described by others as outrageous, unpredictable. The guy teammates joked they would least want dating their sister. In another context, those clips could have remained what they originally looked like. Playful shade, ordinary sports banter, a bit of personality branding. But this is the internet. The internet does not leave old clips where they were found. It drags them into the present and forces them to testify. So now those jokes are no longer being replayed as harmless comedy. They are being reframed as early warning signs. Not proof, not evidence, but atmosphere. And atmosphere matters online more than people like to admit. Once viewers start connecting old footage, fresh accusations, relationship optics, and celebrity defense into one emotional bundle, they stop consuming separate facts and start consuming a narrative. That narrative may be fair. It may be unfair. It may be incomplete. But once it hardens, it becomes very hard to reverse. That is where Cardi B enters the most perilous stretch of the story. Cardi B is not a silent celebrity. Cardi B is not a distant celebrity. Cardi B is not a performer who hides behind publicists and frozen statements. Cardi B likes to talk, likes to clarify, likes to jump in, likes to turn a whisper into a loud room where she can try to wrestle control away from the timeline. Sometimes that works because Cardi B is naturally compelling. Sometimes that works because Cardi B can sound more candid than polished, and audiences often reward candor even when they question the content. But this time, the very instinct that usually gives Cardi B power may be the instinct that exposes Cardi B to a harsher red. Why? Because unresolved allegations are not like an ordinary feud, an award show spat, a messy ex, or a sloppy rumor about industry shade. Allegations involving assault, coercion, drugging, or sexual violence trigger a completely different moral temperature. The room gets colder. The jokes stop landing the same way. Every sentence around the issue becomes heavier. And when someone famous appears to lean too quickly toward protection, the public starts asking a brutal question. Are you defending a person, or are you defending your own decision to stand beside that person? That question is at the center of this entire firestorm. Was Cardi B trying to be loyal? Was Cardi B trying to quiet chaos around Stefon Diggs? Was Cardi B trying to preserve the image of a relationship that already looked risky to outsiders? Or was Cardi B doing what many people do in private, but celebrities are punished for doing in public, betting emotionally before the full facts arrive? The commentary in your source material keeps circling one especially uncomfortable theme. It suggests that when women publicly align themselves with men who come with serious accusations, people stop separating the woman from the man's damage and start asking what level of behavior she is willing to excuse, absorb, normalize, or defend. That may be harsh, but it is a real pattern in celebrity culture. Public association becomes public endorsement in the eyes of many viewers, especially when the defense sounds proactive rather than cautious. And that is why so many reactions are not really about whether Cardi B can date Stefon Diggs. They are about whether Cardi B should publicly go to bat for Stefon Diggs before a legal process, before complete evidence, before any full adjudication, and before the public has settled into a clearer understanding of what is allegation, what is proof, and what is performance. The more Cardi B speaks early, the more Cardi B makes herself part of the evidence board people are building in their minds. That board is already crowded. In the source material, one of the most repeated observations is that some viewers are confused by why Cardi B would step so deeply into defense mode at all. If Stefon Diggs truly wants less attention on the matter, every emphatic defense risks generating the exact opposite effect. It invites people to go dig up screenshots. It invites people to revisit old clips. It invites people to compare timelines. It invites people who had never heard the allegations to suddenly ask what everybody is talking about. Silence stars a scandal. Amateur damage control can feed it. And make no mistake, the public can smell amateur damage control a mile away. The moment a defense sounds like it was motivated by embarrassment instead of certainty, the audience gets suspicious. If Cardi B looks like she is trying to make future appearances with Stefon Diggs feel less awkward, people will call that self-protection. If Cardi B looks like she is pushing too hard, while Stefon Diggs himself is not pushing with the same intensity, people will call that overcompensation. And if Cardi B sounds emotionally invested in clearing the runway before the plane is even approved to land, the public will assume there is a reason for the urgency. This is where the internet's moral psychology becomes ruthless. When viewers believe a celebrity may be defending someone because the celebrity does not want to look foolish later, sympathy starts to evaporate. The story stops being, poor Cardi B, she is in a difficult situation. It becomes, Cardi B is trying to out-talk the smoke before the smoke finds her doorstep. Fair or not, that is a devastating shift. Because once a celebrity gets framed as managing optics rather than seeking truth, every statement starts sounding rehearsed even when it is impulsive. Then there is the issue of the accuser and how presentation changes public reception. Your source material spends a striking amount of time on that angle. It argues that one prior complainant was easy for audiences to mock because she came across as loud, irritating, chaotic, or lacking strong evidence. That may sound superficial, but it points to a real and ugly truth about internet judgment. People often decide whether to take a story seriously based not only on the content of the claim, but on how much they personally like the person making it. That creates a dangerous distortion. If the accuser is polished, quiet, visibly shaken, and camera-friendly, people call her credible before the paperwork arrives. If the accuser is messy, abrasive, unserious, or hard to root for, people often downgrade the substance before they have even engaged the substance. What your source material is really describing is not simply one woman's style. It is the way audiences confuse aesthetics with evidence. And if that confusion helped earlier allegations slide past broader outrage, then Cardi B may have learned the wrong lesson from the internet. The lesson should have been that the public is inconsistent. The lesson should not have been that the issue is therefore safe to touch. Because the internet can ignore one version of a story for months and then suddenly decide the pattern is the story. That is how reputations fall apart. Not always from one fatal headline, but from a pile of old moments that did not matter until the day they all mattered at once. This is why people keep bringing up Cardi B's history with high-drama relationships, public conflict, and reputational spillover. Once a celebrity has a visible record of riding through chaos with controversial partners, the public begins to narrate her choices as a pattern instead of an exception. Then even a potentially good-faith defense becomes evidence in a broader psychological storyline. People stop saying, maybe Cardi B knows something we do not. They start saying, here she goes again. That may sound unfair, but celebrities do not live in a courtroom standard of reputation. They live in a cumulative standard. The public rarely asks only whether this exact move was reasonable in isolation. It asks what this move seems to reveal when added to every other move that came before it. That is how a superstar loses the benefit of the doubt in chunks rather than all at once. Another reason this story has become so combustible is that it sits at the intersection of three subjects audiences are already primed to argue about. First, people are obsessed with Cardi B. Whether they love Cardi B or hate Cardi B generates reaction. Second, people are obsessed with men in power being accused of ugly behavior because those cases force viewers to declare how much proof they need before they judge. Third, people are obsessed with what women tolerate in relationships with famous men. Put those three subjects together, and you do not get a simple celebrity update. You get a referendum on loyalty, a referendum on self-respect, a referendum on whether public women are expected to be moral gatekeepers for the men they date, a referendum on whether the court of public opinion moves too fast or not fast enough, a referendum on whether celebrity status softens outrage that would be harsher if the names were smaller. Cardi B is at the center of that referendum, whether Cardi B likes it or not. And this is exactly why those old sports clips sting more than they should. In a vacuum, being called outrageous or crazy by teammates is just colorful branding. But once serious allegations enter the scene, language that once sounded playful starts sounding prophetic. Again, not because it proves anything. It does not. But because people love retroactive foreshadowing. They love the idea that the signs were always there. It gives the audience emotional satisfaction. It lets them feel observant, vindicated, ahead of the curve. That instinct matters because vindication is one of the strongest fuels in commentary culture. If viewers already felt uneasy about Stefon Diggs, they are now rewarded for that unease. If viewers already disliked Cardi B's involvement, every new clip feels like confirmation. And once audiences feel confirmed, they get harder to move. Facts can still matter, but emotions start choosing which facts deserve the spotlight. The smartest strategy in a moment like this is usually boring. It is patient. It is procedural. It is disciplined. It sounds like this. These are allegations. They are serious. The matter should be handled through the appropriate process. And until that process develops further, I will not try the case on a live stream or in the comments. That statement is not exciting. It will not dominate trending pages. But it protects room for revision. It preserves oxygen. It leaves space for facts that could cut in either direction. What the public struggles to forgive is not caution. It is certainty without jurisdiction. And that is the shadow now hanging over Cardi B. If Cardi B sounds too certain too soon, critics will not hear loyalty. They will hear recklessness. They will hear ego. They will hear panic hiding inside confidence. Here is another layer that cannot be ignored. The man at the center of the claims, at least according to the source material, is not simply being discussed as someone facing ugly allegations. He is also being discussed through the lens of power and domination. The commentary repeatedly suggests that what disturbs people most is not only the accusation itself, but what the accusation implies about control, humiliation, and the possibility of violence as performance. That kind of framing makes the public even less patient with celebrity defense, because it pushes the story out of gossip territory and into moral emergency territory. Once a story reaches that territory, even adjacent behavior gets reinterpreted. Cardi B speaking up is no longer just Cardi B being Cardi B. It becomes a test of values. Stefon Diggs staying quieter becomes either strategic restraint or suspicious retreat, depending on who is watching. Old clips become character evidence in the audience's imagination. Previous relationship drama becomes a prequel. The entire ecosystem rearranges itself around one question. Who is revealing themselves right now? And that is why the optics around family, children, and boundaries hit so hard in your source material. Several reactions revolve around a simple instinct people have whenever allegations this dark appear. Who would I allow around my loved ones under these circumstances? Once audiences mentally move the story into that frame, everything intensifies. Because now they are not just gossiping about Cardi B and Stefon Diggs. They are running a private safety calculation. That is also why the defense can feel so jarring. When ordinary viewers are asking themselves whether they would keep distance from someone under this kind of cloud, hearing a celebrity speak with warmth or protection toward that same person can read as dissonance. The audience thinks, why are you minimizing a risk I am taking seriously? That gap between celebrity framing and audience instinct is where backlash breeds. Still, There is another side that has to be acknowledged if we are going to be honest. Public allegations do not erase due process. Rumors should not automatically become guilt. A loud internet pile-on is not a trial, and a viral clip is not a verdict. If claims are false or exaggerated, then early condemnation can be deeply destructive. That is precisely why this kind of story is so difficult. The stakes are too serious for blind defense, but they are also too serious for blind certainty. That tension is what makes Cardi B's role so combustible. If Cardi B says nothing, some people will say silence proves discomfort. If Cardi B says too much, other people will say she is manipulating perception. If Cardi B stays with Stefon Diggs, people will read that as moral tolerance. If Cardi B leaves Stefon Diggs, people will call it strategic abandonment. There may be no painless move left. There may only be moves that cost different things. But some moves cost more than others, and public overreach is usually expensive. The more Cardi B personalizes the issue, the more difficult it becomes later to retreat to neutrality. Every emphatic defense today becomes a clip tomorrow. Every confident line becomes something commentators replay if worse facts emerge. Every moment of swagger can be turned into a future receipt. That is the trap with live reputation management. It feels powerful in the moment and fragile in hindsight. And that is why the internet keeps circling back to motive. Was Cardi B speaking because Cardi B knows more than the public? Or was Cardi B speaking because Cardi B fears the humiliation of being attached to the wrong man again? Those are two radically different stories, and only one of them allows the audience to extend grace. If viewers conclude the second story is closer to the truth, then even a technically careful defense will be read with hostility. One of the harshest but most revealing claims in the source material is that defending a man too aggressively can teach him that the woman beside him will absorb fallout for him. That is not a legal argument. It is a relational argument. It is the belief that public defense creates permission structures in private life. Whether that belief is fair in this specific case is not something we can prove from clips alone. But as a cultural idea, it is powerful, and it explains why so many reactions sound almost personal. Viewers are not only judging the scandal. They are projecting their own experiences with denial, loyalty, and regret onto Cardi B's choices. That projection is one reason celebrity stories travel so far. People do not merely watch the famous. They use the famous as emotional stand-ins for the arguments they keep having in their own lives. Should you believe the warning signs or the person you care about? Should you wait for hard proof or trust your intuition? Does love require loyalty first or discernment first? Cardi B and Stefon Diggs are not just being consumed as celebrities here. They are being consumed as symbols inside those older human conflicts. So where does that leave the story right now? In an ugly, unstable middle. The allegations remain allegations. The public reactions remain intense. The online record keeps expanding. Cardi B has tied her image more closely to the issue by entering the conversation. Stefon Diggs remains the gravitational center of the accusations, but Cardi B is now undeniably part of the weather system around them. And in that weather system, little things matter. The phrasing, the timing, the tone. Whether a person sounds curious, defensive, dismissive, wounded, arrogant, or afraid. Audiences act like they are weighing evidence, but often they are also weighing emotional congruence. Does this reaction fit the seriousness of the moment? Does this defense sound measured or territorial? Does this look like truth-seeking or reputation shielding? Those judgments may be imperfect, but they shape public memory. If you want the blunt version, here it is. The biggest risk to Cardi B may not be that Cardi B is wrong about Stefon Diggs. The biggest risk is that Cardi B could be seen as prioritizing image management over moral caution. Because once that perception hardens, it stains every future statement. And if more damaging information ever emerges, the first question people will ask is not what Stefon Diggs did. It will be why Cardi B was so eager to step in front of it. That is the nightmare scenario for any celebrity. Not merely being adjacent to scandal, but being recast as part of the machine that softened the room for it. History is brutal to people who look like they helped audiences look away, even when that was not their intention, even when they believed they were protecting someone they loved, even when they themselves felt confused. For now, the wisest reading is restraint. Take the allegations seriously without pretending clips are court rulings. Take Cardi B's involvement seriously without pretending public loyalty equals guilt. Take the old Stefon Diggs footage as context for why the internet is emotionally primed, not as decisive proof of anything. And most of all, notice how quickly this story stopped being about one man and became about what everybody around him is willing to excuse, deny, reinterpret, or fight to protect. That is why this is not just another messy celebrity headline. It is a stress test. For Cardi B's instincts. For Stefon Diggs' image. For how online audiences weigh allegation versus evidence. For how much charisma can still buy in an era when viewers say they want accountability, but still often sort stories by who annoyed them least. And maybe that is the ugliest truth buried inside all of this. People claim they want facts, but many of them want emotional satisfaction first. They want the villain they expected. They want the heroine they can defend. They want the ex who looks wiser in hindsight. They want the loud accuser dismissed if she is inconvenient and the polished accuser believed if she is easier to package. They want the messy superstar humbled if they already resented her. They want Cardi B vindicated if they still feel protective of Cardi B. They want Stefon Diggs condemned if they already distrusted Stefon Diggs. They want the story to confirm what they were already leaning toward. That is why the next move matters so much. If Cardi B keeps talking, the backlash could deepen because every new defense gives critics more material. If Cardi B goes quiet, people will study the silence like it is a confession written in invisible ink. If Stefon Diggs speaks more, the public will pick apart every line. If Stefon Diggs stays quiet, the vacuum will fill itself. Nobody involved gets a clean escape route from here. So the real question is no longer whether the internet is overreacting. The internet always reacts hard when celebrity, sex, power, and uncertainty collide. The real question is who understands the danger of this moment well enough to stop performing for the timeline and start respecting the gravity of what unresolved allegations do to everyone standing too close. Because once the public decides you are not just in the storm but actively shaping the forecast, the damage spreads fast. It spreads from Stefon Diggs to Cardi B, from accusation to association, from rumor to memory, from one bad week to a permanent asterisk. And if nobody involved recalibrates soon, what began as a cloud over Stefon Diggs may end up rewriting how a lot of viewers look at Cardi B too. So now I want to know where you land on it. Did Cardi B make a loyal move? Or did Cardi B make a reckless move? Is Stefon Diggs being judged through actual substance, internet atmosphere, or both? And when a celebrity speaks before the full picture is clear, do you hear courage, denial, or plain old fear of looking foolish later? Because that answer may tell us as much about the audience as it does about Cardi B and Stefon Diggs.